Wong back in court to appeal their jail sentences for storming Civic Square in 2014. Also tonight, President Xi touts positive changes on Korean Peninsula in a phone call with Donald Trump. All right, first up tonight, Carrie Lam has hit out at UK-based advocacy group Hong Kong Watch for interfering in the city's affairs with unfounded and unfair comments. This comes after British politician Paddy Ashdown published a report that suggested Hong Kong is at a critical juncture and the rights enshrined in the Sino-British Joint Declaration are under threat. The chief executive said it's worrying that some people in the city attack Beijing's liaison office for meddling in Hong Kong's affairs, but not a foreign organization. She said that some people are reading too much into the comments made by liaison office head Wang Jimin, who promised more frequent cooperation with the local government.
It is in the issue which has a very strong mainland angle and perspective, and this sort of liaison will help Hong Kong. And to allege that China, and this is a word they use, that China continues to erode Hong Kong's autonomy and freedoms, thereby breaching an international treaty, is totally unfounded.
Well, the city's leader also refused to say whether ousted lawmaker Edward Yiu will be eligible to join the LegCo by-election in March. That's after local media quoted sources saying Yiu is very likely to be disqualified. The former urban planning scholar was stripped of his seat last July for improper oath-taking. Lam said she's in no legal position to say who's allowed to stand. In other local news, Occupy student leaders Joshua Wong, Nathan Law and Alex Chow were back in the city's top court today to challenge their jail sentences for storming Civic Square in 2014. The judges will decide whether the 6 to 8 month prison terms imposed on them by the Court of Appeal last year were too harsh. Chief Justice Geoffrey Ma said the teenage defendants who committed similar crimes in the past were mostly given community service orders. He said teenagers shouldn't be sent to jail unless there are no other appropriate punishments. But Public Prosecution Director David Leung argued that in some rare cases, teenage defendants are also given jail terms. He said if the judges don't agree with him, they may consider releasing the trio immediately.
For the possibility for the court send me to a prison again might be around 50-50. However, I think now is the chance for us to aware that how the court of Hong Kong will recognize, will position the motivation of civil disobedience.
Meantime, police arrested a woman for contempt of court after she used insulting language to describe a judge who sentenced ex-police officer Frank Lee Ju to 3 months in jail for hitting an Occupy protester with his baton. The 63-year-old is believed to be among a crowd of Jews supporters outside the Eastern Court on January 3rd. She's now out on bail but has to report to the police next month. Some of the protesters on the day were heard calling Indian-born principal Magistrate Bina Chanrai a dog and that all foreign judges should be let go. All right, a South Korean man who allegedly killed his wife and 60-year-old son at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel on Sunday appeared in court today to hear his murder charges. The 42-year-old businessman was taken to the Kowloon City Magistrates Court in a custody van. He now faces 2 counts of murder. Prosecutors said the man was semi-conscious at the time of arrest and that they need to wait for medical reports to show he's mentally fit to answer in court. The case is adjourned until the end of this month. He'll be remanded at the Siloam Psychiatric Centre for the time being. Qantas Airways has had to amend its website after it was caught by Beijing for listing Hong Kong and Taiwan as separate countries. The airline is one of the latest foreign firms to be hit by China's recent sovereignty crackdown. In a statement, Qantas said it was due to an oversight that some Chinese territories were incorrectly listed as countries. Beijing authorities began prodding foreign companies last week to check their websites and make any needed changes. So far, only Marriott International is known to have been punished over the issue. The world's biggest hotel chain had its Chinese website suspended for a week. To other news, Chinese President Xi Jinping is believed to have touted positive changes on the Korean peninsula in a conversation with Donald Trump. Chinese state media reported that Xi encouraged all sides involved to keep up the hard-won momentum for the easing of the situation on the Korean peninsula and create conditions to restart talks. There's been a renewed sense of calm in recent weeks after the two Koreas met for the first time in 2 years. Pyongyang has agreed to send athletes to Pyeongchang Winter Olympics in South Korea. Right, up next, the latest from the world of business.
Thanks, Patrick. Well, we start with the markets, which had a heck of a day after yesterday's session ended their record-breaking run here. The Hang Seng today closing up a whopping 1.8% at 31,904 points, a fresh 10-year high for the index. Consumer stocks led gains with only AAC Technologies falling by any significant amount, down around 3.5%. The bigger performance on the market, though, was the stock exchange itself, which closed up almost 6%. That's likely thanks to growing speculation about future listings here, as it plans on changing its rules on dual-class shares. Yet more signs that Hong Kong could be set for a bonanza year of IPOs as JD.com kicked off its own fundraising. China's second biggest e-commerce firm is raising money at a logistics unit with a target of at least $2 billion, according to Reuters. The plans are eventually for the business unit to list overseas, which could include Hong Kong. The company hasn't officially commented yet, but comes as China's major e-commerce firms look to bulk up their logistics businesses in support of their global ambitions. Lawmakers in the US are apparently putting pressure on the country's second-largest telecoms operator, AT&T, to sever all ties with China's Huawei. They're also looking to oppose plans by China Mobile to enter the US market as well, with both moves motivated by national security concerns, according to Reuters. It would be the latest in a string of Chinese acquisitions blocked by the US for that reason, including Ant Financial's purchase of MoneyGram. The news comes as Donald Trump's administration continues to take a harder line on US-China deals, both business and diplomatic. A French dairy firm has found itself at the centre of a global outbreak of salmonella after its baby milk was found to have spread the bacteria. While most of those infected from the products from Lactalis have so far been in France, there are signs of the disease further afield, which could open it up to huge lawsuits. Anna Bevan reports.
One of the world's largest dairy groups has come under fire for its slow response to a salmonella outbreak. French company Lactalis has promised to compensate victims after 36 children in France and 2 others overseas fell ill as a result of the contamination in its baby milk. Some of their families are planning a raft of lawsuits. Last week, Lactalis widened a product recall of millions of tins of its baby milk in more than 80 countries.
The victims are the parents who bought those products. We still don't know which ones were potentially contaminated. We don't know how widespread this is, so I strongly advise all the parents the brands involved shouldn't be used.
The French government has also pointed the finger at retailers. And some families are planning legal action against supermarket chains after potentially tainted products remained on shelves despite the recall. Salmonella infections can be life-threatening. The fallout from this health scare risks damaging France's reputation abroad.
Since the infraction occurred on French territory and the suspect, the Lactalis Group, has its headquarters in France, the victims, whether they be Spanish, Greek or Chinese, will be able to file a complaint in France with the Paris public prosecutor.
A judicial investigation is underway to determine exactly who is to blame.
Well, China's GDP figures are expected on Thursday, and economists reckon that the data will show the country's economy is slowing down this year. A government-led crackdown on debt risks and factory pollution is expected to impact overall activity in the mainland, according to a Reuters poll of economists. GDP growth for 2017 is expected to be 6.5%. Beijing is currently in the second year of a relentless campaign to wean China off its debt-heavy investment model. Well, if there's one theme that Donald Trump has defined his presidency with so far, it is America first, in particular on trade. He has decried a series of international deals, from NAFTA to TTIP, as bad for the US, and he's withdrawn Washington from them accordingly. According to the EU, though, all Trump is doing is hurting American interests. Ahead of Trump's speech at the World Economic Forum in the Swiss resort of Davos next week, the EU's trade commissioner said that former trade partners of the US are now desperate for deals elsewhere instead. It comes a year after Chinese President Xi Jinping gave a speech at Davos, which was praised as brilliant. But according to Cecilia Malmstrom, China too is making things harder for its foreign partners as well.
We have reports from our European companies in China that business is becoming even more difficult and complicated and untransparent and discriminatory. And European investment in China is going down. So I hope now that after the internal party congresses and so on, that we'll see some action, because we want to trade with China, but we need to do it in equal terms.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has begun the second day of an historic visit to India that has already yielded talks on a free trade pact between the two countries. India and Israel have historically been close allies in a relationship based largely on arms purchases, but an Israeli Prime Minister has not visited for 15 years. Our correspondent in Mumbai, Radhika Bajaj, has more for us on what to expect from the visit.
Well, the 9 deals that were signed yesterday are likely to deepen cooperation between India and Israel at a time that's convenient for both. The deals cover areas like cybersecurity, space, as well as oil and gas exploration. Now, bilateral trade between the two countries has grown from about $200 million in 1992 to over $4.2 billion in 2016. It should be said that while the economic relationship looks to be strengthening, a lot of it has to do with the security and defense. In fact, Israel is now one of the biggest suppliers of weapons to India. On a personal level, Netanyahu told reporters yesterday that he saw a kindred spirit in Mr. Modi in terms of getting things done. Mr. Modi himself has been a long-time admirer of Netanyahu's stance on terrorism, but there are some awkward issues still, so let's not expect this visit to go by without a hitch entirely. India was one of the nations that voted in favor of a UN motion that opposed the US stance of recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital.
Well, when it comes to image, beauty companies more than most are aware of precisely what they're showing prospective customers. But in an industry that has long been criticised for the unrealistic images they sell, CVS Health in the US is among the first to be praised for a new down-to-earth policy. Zach Goldman reports.
CVS Health, which operates more than 9,600 pharmacies and stores in the U.S., is going au naturel. The company on Monday announced it would stop using digitally altered photographs to market its beauty products, going from this to this. CVS pledging to not, quote, materially alter the imagery, including models' shapes, sizes, lines, wrinkles, or other characteristics.
We thought